All right, everyone. I'm here with my very special guest, Lucha Saint-Fleury. Lucha, please say hello.
Hello.
Thank you so much, Lucha, for coming back. Right, you've been a guest on the FREEda's World platform before. Thank you for
I
coming.
have. Thank you for having me back.
You welcome, you welcome. So today you're coming back in a slightly different capacity. We're not talking about your wedding slash event planning business, but we are gonna go to this other aspect of you, which is the HR recruiter, executive individual.
Yes.
So Lucha, it's been a while. Tell the people a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
Who am I? Oh my God. I'm a jack of all trades, let's say. Outside professionally, yes, you know me from Design by Lou. I manage an event planning, wedding and event planning firm. But naturally, by nature, I'm an HR professional. I'm a director of talent acquisition for a publishing company. And I've been in recruiting for about, I'm going to say about 16 years now.
Mhm.
So I know a little bit in about recruiting and hiring, the transferring and onboarding, all of that, and what people should look for. And part of when I did start my business, I left the industry in 2016, but I always found myself either someone is connecting with me via LinkedIn, asking me a question about a position. I was like, hey, can you connect me with this job? So I still had my connections. And I was like, listen, it's something that I naturally love. And I think there's a lot of transferable skills when it comes to wedding planning,
Mhm.
event planning, because the whole process of vetting people, vendors, and so forth. I was like, I might as well just return back. I'm not getting paid for this. I'm making all these connections and I'm not getting paid. So I decided to go back in 2019.
All right. And I think that
Yes.
was the episode. I think we were talking about back to corporate. I think that was
Back to
the
corporate.
episode. Yes,
Exactly.
that
Exactly.
was the episode. All right,
Yes.
Lucha. So, what we want to talk about today is, we want to have a conversation around the promotions and reevaluating our salaries and our worth when it comes to the workplace, right? We're at the end
Right.
of the year, and I've been hearing a lot of chatter amongst my friend circles
Of
about,
course.
going to their managers and, reevaluating their raises, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
seeking, promotions and whatnot, because they're anticipating this, the year end bonus that usually happens sometime in the early spring. But
Right.
before we really get into that, I want to know, like, is this even the time, like this end of year period that we're in, is this the time to even be having these conversations with our managers?
It's always a good time to have a conversation with your manager, right? I think the having that open, that dialogue between you and your supervisor, just understanding where you are and where you want to go, and the necessary steps in between that needs to happen for you to get there, should be happening. I think every quarter, or even like biannually, you should be having that conversation.
Hmm.
So right now, with end of the year, what tends to happen recruiting from on my end, we're understanding right now there's a slowdown, right? So people not really actively looking because of the holidays, right? People make plans and not looking to start a job at any point in December. However, during the break, that's when people start the whole New Year resolution. People start to think about their next step, right? Evaluate their career, their salary, the things that they want to do for 2022, their goals, and if their salary will support those goals. And that's when there'll be that influx. You're going to start having that influx of resignations and so forth. But yes, it's always good before you resign. If you love your job, you love the people that you work with, and if it's just a matter of salary, it is a time for you to always have a conversation with your manager just to understand what you need to do to get to the next level.
Okay. So now, making a focus on Black women, right? There are
Mm-hmm.
statistics that show that Black women are still getting paid less than their white counterparts
Right.
and Black men. Is that still a thing? Is that, we hear all these successes of Black women, but are we still getting paid less than our counterparts?
It's not, I certainly cannot speak to a data because I don't have a data to report on for myself, but what I have experienced within my own personal realm in my space when making an offer to whether it's a black woman, a white woman, a black male, a white man, I do find that the white male are more confident in what they're coming, what they're
Mm-hmm.
seeking. I think it's a level of confidence of understanding your worth. So before, while you are in the interviewing process, or even when a potential employer reaches out to you, understand the role and what the range is, right? The good thing about salary information is now we're not privy to even ask what you're earning. It's more
Mm-hmm.
so what's your desired salary. So before that was a problem. But now it's like, okay, I'm being asked to interview for this role. What's the salary range? So do a deep dive in understanding the ranges. Like you could go through, I think I mentioned Glassdoor, and I
Mm-hmm.
even think like TikTok, people are being very transparent about salary information. Just do your research and prepare yourself. And when we do ask, like I will ask, what's your desired salary? It is an overwhelming question for a lot of people. They
Right.
get stuck of, I don't know what to ask. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what is it paying? What's the range? Can you share that with me? I don't want to oversell myself, undersell myself. And it's fair. It's funny just to see other folks how sometimes we don't value ourselves when we're asked that question. What do you want? What are you seeking? And everyone gets stuck. But yes, I find that more so African American women are more intimidated by that question, and sometimes they undervalue themselves. So
Interesting.
yeah.
So it seems so, because before I used to always wonder when they say, Black women are getting paid less or white women, I'm like, how is this possible? Like where is this stemming from? But now it makes sense because when I'm, getting an offer, right, and I'm
Mhm.
negotiating a salary, that salary is based on what the negotiation is, right? So that's
Exactly.
that's how somebody, like, that's how I can get paid less than you if I go in and I don't negotiate my salary properly.
Negotiating is one thing, but not understanding, doing your research and understanding the market
Right.
value is another. So I
Mm-hmm.
can go in and say, I'm seeking 80 to 85 for this role, where we very well had $120,000 in the budget for the role.
Right.
Right. So now there's two things. Either the recruiter could say, oh, perfect, you're right within budget. It may not share
Mm-hmm.
the range with you, and then come back and say, okay, we can offer you 85 and just save an X amount of dollar for the company. But then we're also dealing with now what we call pay parity. So
Right.
now, even though you're asking for 80 to 85, I will need to go back and look at the other internal assets, like who else is occupying this role and what their salaries are. So if there are three people who are analysts and one is at 100, one is at 95, another one's at 90, although you're asking for 80 to 85, it's not fair to bring you at such a lower range when the other staff are within between the 90 and 100. So I would bring you in within the 90 and 100. So I may offer you 90, 95, but still, you just have to know your range. And then there are a couple of things that we're dealing with. The pay parity, a lot of corporations are looking into that just to make sure that we're rewriting, making things right again, just making
Right.
sure that other folks are not undervalued within the team.
Right. And yeah, pay equity, pay parity is a term that's been floating around a lot. And I could say even
Absolutely.
in my own experience, with the organization that I'm in, I'm kind of going through that reevaluation of salary. And there's a lot that I even learned from the process. And there's another tool I guess I'll give out there called
Mm-hmm.
payscale.com that I see a lot of organizations are using, and they do have like a free version where you as the employee or the prospective candidate could kind of go in and put in some basic information to kind of get a range of what your I guess your financial worth is within the
Is
industry.
right.
And I think that that's very helpful because now when you're having these conversations, you have that data available
Absolutely.
to counter, right? And say, well,
Absolutely.
thank you for your 90,000. However, this position minimum is 150.
Exactly. It's you have to do, and I think for most part, a lot of companies are benchmarking these roles just to make sure that we're within a market range. So even if someone comes back very well below the market value, I don't think it's in your advantage to even yes, it's a $50,000 savings for the company. It's going to bite you at some point. So you want to be fair across the board, and you're boosting morale, and you want to put your best foot forward when we're extending an offer. But I always say to our candidates, one, it doesn't hurt to ask. The only thing I can say is no if it's outside of our range, right? The offer has been presented to you. You have every right to review the offer. Take some time to think about the offer, because I've had people on the spot who say, yes, I'll take it. And then later on, oh, I've given it some thought. I'm seeking this. I'm like, but you said yes. I've already shared that information, and now it's hard to just retract that information. So
Mm-hmm.
just take your time, take a day or two to think about the offer. And even when you are going through the process, I'm going to highly recommend that think about what you need. You know, what type of income you want to earn to sustain your living. Like, okay, if I moving from 80,000 and I want to buy a new car, there's certain things I want to do. I want to be within the 90-95 range. That's my next move, right? And be fair and be strategic about it and seek those opportunities. And another way for you to know what market, what ranges are, what's being offered out there. I always tell people, I've had folks reach out to me saying, hey, Lucia, I've been, recruiter reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm not looking to leave, or I've thought about leaving. Should I connect with them? Should I contact them? I said, does it hurt to build your network?
Right.
Yes, connect with them. It's okay to schedule a meeting just to hear about the opportunities available out there. And they're going to share the salary range with you. So that's going to give you an idea. Oh, I'm making 80,000 and I'm being approached for roles for $120,000. So that should spark to say, okay, either I can go back to my manager and you can let them know I'm not looking to leave, but I've done some research. I'm, is there a way we can evaluate my salary, or what's the next step for promotion? And they should be very happy to have that discussion with you if you're definitely an employee of value that they want to retain.
Now, is it okay during that consideration process to say, well, what is budgeted for this role?
I don't know how transparent they're going to be about it. For most part, we can. I could say, listen, I'm budgeted at $100,000 for this opportunity, and I know that you're seeking 120. I have $100,000, and sometimes we can go back to I'm speaking about an external hire, not internal. I can go back to the team and see if they have it within the budget to make an adjustment for the right candidate based on years of experience, what they're bringing to the table. They can make some adjustment based on finance approval. But often, if it's outside of our range, we're having no problem sharing that information.
Okay. Because I know that some people might find that to be like a little too much to just come out and say, what's the budget? But I think that, going back to something you said earlier about just Black women maybe being a little intimidated when it comes to having these conversations, now it's becoming a little more clear to me why there may be these, wage disparities, because we are not coming into these conversations prepared. We don't have the research. Yeah. And we're not asking the right questions, and we're lowballing ourselves.
We're lowballing ourselves a lot of times. And luckily for those who had the opportunity to be interviewed by me, I'm fair in my process, right? But then there are other recruiters, of course, it's all about the bottom line. It's savings. And I think about more so long-term, how, this is going to affect someone if they understand that someone is making $20,000 more than them. That's like, you want to boost morale within a team. And that, of course, can be a big hindrance for the department.
Right. Okay. So let's say, we're thinking about having these conversations with our managers. We've been at an organization, even if it's just been a year, but we feel like, you know what? I have poured into this organization. I think that I am an employee of value. What are some things that people can actually leverage, right? Because sometimes we don't even know, aside from, well, I have good work ethic, or maybe there was a particular, deliverable that I was able to meet. But like outside of maybe what the obvious is in terms of, oh, I'm a hard worker, I'm a good worker, what other things can one leverage when we're, thinking about reevaluation of salaries and promotions?
I would say, of course, track your projects, right? Take notes of the project you're working on. And if you feel that you're operating at 40 to 50% capacity at the next level above you, then you should definitely leverage that. If I'm a manager operating at a senior manager level, you need to take that data and say, looking at the job description for senior manager, I'm able to perform at this, that. And the data tells a story. Like, okay, here I've been performing and you're tracking that. That's a leverage.
Right. So that is interesting, because I can probably say that most people may not really be tracking their
wins, right?
Their work,
you have to. Sometimes a manager can say, hey, I'm unable to run this report or work on this project. Can you lead this? Oh, I'm going to lead this. All right. Okay. You take notes and you make sure when you do have a follow-up conversation tooting your own horn. And I think that's something that we're so uncomfortable doing,
Yes.
is highlighting our wins. And we just don't do that. Where I know for me, it's like I'm very timid. It's a humble experience. I want to be humble. But I've realized in corporate America, there's nothing humble. If you've done something that's a stellar performance, you need to highlight it. You have to promote yourself. You need to be your biggest cheerleader, because that's how your name is going to get circulated. That's when people really take notice of you, because you're tooting your own horn. And I think a lot of times as a woman of color or even minorities, we're afraid to do that, because it's not a sign of, we want to be a little bit more, have, humility about the process of celebrating certain wins, but we need to shout it out, because our counterpart will make sure to let you know
All
that
right.
they led this project, and it's because of their effort.
Yeah. I
It's
mean,
where it is.
listen, I've experienced individuals. I mean, these are the same individuals that in their year-end review to family and friends, they let you know what they did at work. So
They'll let you know. They'll let you know. So you have to celebrate yourself, and you need to highlight your wins.
yeah. And I definitely, I had a friend of mine when we were working for the government together, who even on the government level, now she's in corporate and is like a boss, but she had developed this from, even when we were like first years at this establishment, where she had a folder, like a tab on her, computer of
Right.
all the things that she has done, that she's contributed, that she's done extra outside of her, her job description. So I think,
That's your selling point.
right. I think, a lot of us maybe we don't even think to look to see what these other job descriptions entail.
Of course.
We're not looking at the senior leader, job description. So I think that's a
Because we're
really
just
good tip.
focused on our title. We're just focused on
Right.
what we're doing. And I think we have that mentality, like, just be grateful we have a job,
Right.
and we're just moving and just operating that fashion. But you just really have to take the time to reevaluate what you're doing, to what capacity, and the value you bring
Mhm.
to each project, and then just weigh that in.
So now with respect to preparation, because I know offline we had talked about this a little bit. So let's
Right.
say, okay, I have this folder, I'm keeping track of my wins, right? Again, I feel like I'm valuable. But let's say we're in a particular position where, even though we might be operating to some capacity in this senior level position, um, but you're not 100% there yet, right? So you're like, okay, let me table this promotion conversation or salary conversation for maybe 6 months to a year from now.
Mhm.
So what are some things that people can do to prepare to go to that next level, right? Because mentorship is not always available at some of these
Right.
corporate spaces, especially for women of color. So it's not often that you'll find the senior manager say, let me take you under my wing to show you how to do my job. So
Right. Right.
what are
Right.
some things that you have discovered, being a professional, that maybe people who do have their, their sights set on a senior management role or a role, the next level,
Next
what
level.
can they do?
Listen, like I said, always have that dialogue, have that um the opportunity for you to have that dialogue with your hiring manager at all times, right? Whether we have those conversations every 6 months, but again, you don't want to assume, right? And I think when it comes to leadership and moving to the next level, your supervisor wants you to come to them.
Mm,
That shows your level of leadership, right? How assertive you are, and taking control of your career. So even if you don't feel like you're 100% there, but it's good to hear from them exactly what is it that I need to work on to
mhm.
get to that next level, and they're more than happy to share those steps with you. So the dialogue, that communication needs to happen, because you don't want to assume, okay, I'm not performing this, so I need to work on that, and it could be something totally different. Like, no, you need to work on A, B, C, and D, and then we'll get you there. And then I also look at the person who is currently in that role, in that senior manager title, right?
Mhm.
That level. You can have lunch and say, can we go out to lunch? Can you tell me about the role? Let me know, are you open to sharing some of the challenges of this role?
Mhm.
What can I do? If you work side by side, they have the opportunity to evaluate your work performance. They too can be able to be a help to you to understand what you need to elevate to the next level.
Right. Yeah, I think that's really important because I think a lot of times we have this mentality that, well, if the managers think that we're qualified to get to the next level, they will come and have that conversation with us. I think
Exactly. No,
TV has changed that for us.
no, you have to drive your career. You have to have that conversation, and you have to be you should be your number one advocate.
Mhm.
And you can't blame someone for not coming to you to promote you. Like,
Right, right.
unless you let them know, hey, because sometimes they're occupied, they're so busy with other projects, and they may not know that you're the one that's leading the charge on this one. They may not know that you helped Susan in accounting with that project, right? It is for you to highlight in an email or a recap. Hey, so you could be informed. I worked on this project. Like, oh,
Mhm.
really? I didn't know. Sometimes they just don't know. You have to be the one to inform
Right.
them.
So it sounds like there's a lot of confidence that's needed to be able to take
For
any of those
sure.
steps, right?
For
I guess,
sure. For sure.
how does one build this confidence, right, within the workplace? I mean, we're competent individuals, we're doing the work, but how do we work up this courage to, one, seek a promotion, reevaluate our salaries, have conversations with senior managers?
Listen, I would say invest in yourself and hire a coach,
Mm,
right? Because you may not have that internal mentorship, partnership, and
right,
so forth, right? So you can invest in yourself and hire a coach or get yourself an external mentor
right,
and help you with those conversations
right.
and start to build your own your build your confidence in the work that you do, being able to work a room and just being able to feel like the need to that you can sit at the table just like anybody else. So you have to build that, and it's going to be trained. You have to
Mhm.
take the time and invest in yourself and develop those skills because it's not easy. It's not.
Right, right.
We all need it.
Yes. And I'm glad you brought that up because I think a lot of times people, they kind of push that idea to their side and they're like, why am I going to go pay for, for a coach for? Let me go on
Right.
YouTube right quick. Let me
Listen, you can listen to some self-motivated tape. You can do it. You are worth it. Wake up
Mhm.
to, you can tell yourself all of that every day, every morning. But I think just having a professional who can really look at your resume,
Right.
help you walk you through step by step your responsibilities, how some of your skills can transfer, right? What are some of the transferable skills that you have? They having that deep dive conversation with someone else one-on-one is gonna be extremely helpful when you are having those conversations with senior management.
Okay. So I kind of want to flip this just a little bit with respect to the interviewing process, right? Because I
Right.
want to make sure that I dedicate at least some time to that. Because some people who are listening are like, okay, great, you know, I know what steps to take, for salary evaluation or when considering an offer,
Mhm.
don't take it, right away. Wait maybe 72 hours, all that
Right.
stuff. But now some people might be saying, okay, well, you know what? Since we have this amazing HR talent recruiter here,
Oh, you're so
you know,
kind.
what if I'm interviewing with a company, right?
Hmm.
What are some, maybe like give me three things that you are looking for in a candidate, when they are
Okay.
applying?
So applying or interviewing them, looking at
Uh,
their resume,
yeah,
or
let's say interviewing. I've already applied, right?
okay, you've already applied and I reach out to you. One, first and foremost, for me, knowing the company that you've applied to and the role that you've applied for, right? So, like I said, I'm in publishing, media, advertising, I need a level of energy, right? A
Hmm.
level of polishness. Like you have to be polished and just understanding the brand, be prepared about the company,
Hmm.
right? And definitely be prepared to speak about your wins, because I think the first thing I like to ask my candidate is, tell me, I'm going to give you this opportunity to show off. Tell
Mm.
me about yourself. What is it about you? And I think sometimes that question takes, candidates is taking a little bit back about it because like, oh, I have to sell myself. I'm giving this platform, show off. Tell me, what
Right.
is it? What is it about you, this company, this role that excites you? And then they get comfortable, right? So I think being prepared, understanding the company, understanding the brand, and being comfortable with who you are and what you're able to bring to the table.
Okay. And that's really important. And I think that as we, I think research is a very big theme throughout this
Mhm.
conversation, researching the organization, but also taking time to go back and research your own portfolio, right? Because a lot of times I
Exactly.
think we have amazing wins from prior positions that we totally forgot about. And I'll give a personal anecdote. When I was applying for the role that I'm in now, and this is why it's good to have a good friend circle who also knows your wins.
Right.
I had a case that I had written a brief on, one of my first jobs with one of my former coworkers, Marley. You know Marley.
Right.
We were working together, and I wrote a brief on this particular case, and that brief was then put into the New York Law Journal, right? Now, I forgot about this. So when this particular, my supervisor now was talking to my references, one of the things she wanted to kind of make sure that she understood was my writing ability because of the
Hmm.
nature of the role. And
Right.
so, some examples of it. So she's talking to Marley. Marley's one of my references, and she asked Marley this question. I was like, "Yeah, she wrote this brief that was in this thing." And then so my supervisor was like, "Really? Like I want like
And you didn't
wow."
look
I
at that.
forgot about it. So now when I had like the follow up, I guess second interview with the supervisor, she's like, Marley had told me about this, article or whatever, could you send me the case? And I'm like, Marley, what case was this? So she remembered it. And I was
Oh,
like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot about this. It was like an accomplishment that I forgot
right.
so
That you've
long ago.
forgotten. Listen,
But yeah, but it's important to keep tabs and brag
keep
about it.
tabs. Oh, and I'll also add, do have questions. Be prepared with questions for the interview.
Mm.
We'll always turn the question, we'll always turn the table and say, do you have any questions for us? Anything that you like to ask? I don't like when I can't say, no, no, I think you've answered pretty much everything. I'm like, no, please just have one or two questions, you
But
know?
but what you know what that I agree with you there because I've done some interviewing in my day as well too. So I understand that because I kind of it's like a 101, right? Like make sure you
Right.
have at least one question. So one of the questions that have become my go-to is really talking about the culture. Like what is the culture of the
Absolutely.
organization,
If
right?
you feel like you've taken in everything, the culture is one thing.
Right.
What are the next steps? Or what do you think I'm able to, based on our conversation, do you think that my background will be of great value to the team? Is there any
Wow.
transferable skills that you were able to pull from my background that's applicable to this role? Now you're open, you're having a dialogue,
Yeah.
right? So I just be prepared because it's one of those things. I'm like, what do you mean you don't have a question? You should have a question.
But that's actually good because I don't think I would have thought to put it back on the interviewer to say, well, so we've had this conversation, right? I told you about myself. You read my resume. What do you
Well,
think
not
I
like
bring?
that.
I mean, not,
Not in that fact.
I mean,
I'm like, what? No, not like that though.
not,
Let's
okay,
let's rephrase it.
not
Let's
like
rephrase
that,
that.
but
Not in that tone.
not, not in that tone, but like the way that you said it, like the fact that that could even really be a question, like what transferable skills do you think that I bring based on our interaction? I don't think many people would have even thought that they can kind of put that back on the
I've
interviewer.
had quite a few candidates who's asked, they have asked me that, and I'm like, yeah, you're able to do this, you're able to do that. That translate well into this role and so forth. So it comes down to a lot of things, like just being, know that just as much as that you want this job and we want you to believe me, we want to fill the
Hmm.
role, we want to make sure we're able to hire the right person for this opportunity, but you too, this is your new home, right? You're
Right.
looking for a new home, you want to make sure it's the right fit for you, so be prepared with your questions
Right.
and do take your time to review benefits. And I think I'll
Yes.
just talk about this a little bit. I know sometimes when we think about compensation package overall, it's not just your base, whether there's a bonus attached to it. Look into the benefits plan, PTO time, other perks that that there's a dollar value to that. So that can also be part of your compensation package.
I'm glad you brought that up because that's something that I had to kind of learn the hard way, and I think I might have talked to you about this before
Right.
with one of my former roles where I'm like, the salary is what I asked, and it's funny because now that I know more, when they ask, what do you want? And you're like, well, I want 140, and they're like, we'll give that to you, and it's like, oh, great. So then
And you're like, and then you walk away like, it probably had $180,000 in the
Right.
budget.
Because if you could tell me, yes, you can do that, like right then and there, then it's like, oh man. But then it, like you said, the benefits package, because now you're like, wait, compared to my other job, I only have 10 days vacation as opposed to 20 days vacation,
Right.
or I only have 5 sick days as opposed to 10 sick days. And my way, I have to pay this much for my health insurance, where in this job I didn't have no copays. So I had
Right.
to learn that lesson, because I didn't, and it goes back to what you said earlier, where sometimes as Black women, we just feel like we're just grateful to even be working, even though
Right.
we have multiple degrees and are more qualified than some of our counterparts. It's that idea where it's like, I got the salary that I asked for. I'm not even thinking about benefits, like,
Exactly.
and that's a
You have
killer.
to. It's a killer. Think about 401k. What's the match, right?
Right.
Because that's a savings. That's your retirement savings. So there's a lot that goes into it. And I want people to take the time to review an offer package. If an
Hmm.
offer is presented to you, just making sure you're going through it with the fine tooth comb, just to make sure health wise, PTO time, vacation, holiday, perks, just look at everything. Don't just look at the dollar amount.
Right. Now
Because
this,
you could be leaving your current job to
yeah,
literally to be making only $5,000 more. Like
right.
it
And
makes no sense.
that has been a thing, like it's
Yeah.
happened. So
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely, unfortunately, but we know we live and we learn. We live and we learn.
You live, you learn. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So the last thing I wanted to touch on, particularly still within the benefits world, right? Because I
Sure.
remember one time we had a conversation maybe a couple of years ago, and you were saying that, yeah, depending on the industry, there are certain things you can ask for, like a dry cleaning budget and things like that. And when you told me this, I was like, are you kidding me? Like you can make these asks, and you're like, well, if they require you to be like prim and
The
proper.
face, yeah, depending on the role,
Mhm.
absolutely. Let's say if you're a reporter, right? And you're on camera, on air camera, where your makeup needs to be, you need to be, what's the word?
Beat
God,
face
what's the
beat. Your
phrase?
face has to be.
Face beat, right? You want
Yes.
your face beat. We wear installs. You need to get a good wig every 6 months.
Listen.
Like, beauty and just making sure that your upkeep. So it's like an upkeep budget. You
Hmm.
can negotiate that.
In,
Dry cleaning, clothes, and absolutely.
interesting. Because the thing is, like, you're right. If I'm going to be on camera, you don't want me using drugstore makeup. You want me to
Right.
use Mac and
You're the
above,
face of the
L'Oreal.
company. Absolutely. You're
Right,
the face of the
right.
company. So you can certainly you should certainly be, it should be part of your contract. If not, you should negotiate that.
And so again, that's where I guess the research would go. So it looks like, on top of researching salary and looking at benefits, but look, maybe another search on like perks, right? Certain industries, what are some typical
Absolutely.
perks?
Absolutely. Whether it's like, oh my God, with this company, I get to go to um, Broadway shows or events, or just getting, what else can I say? Oh, like for my company, like they provide snacks and lunch or,
Hmm.
little things like that. I'm a foodie. I was like, that was like sold. I'll take it, right? Oh, you have snacks, you have chips and drinks and stuff like that. So definitely look into perks.
Right. I mean, that was a major perk at one of my former jobs. I worked for a hotel. So dry clean was like part, like it was
Oh, you
in-house
just
dry clean. They had a restaurant in the hotel. So it was meals and snacks. So I was like, this is the best thing
This
ever.
is because you know what, if you think about your daily budget, right, or weekly budget for just food, just to work in the city,
Right.
you're spending on
Expensive.
average $15 per day. It's a good thing that now we're in a hybrid or remote structure now,
Hmm.
but when you're in the office 5 days a week, you're spending an average about $10 for lunch.
Hmm.
So that's $50 per week per
Right.
week. So if you add that up, that's a budget that, yeah. So if you're getting free lunch or some type of refund snack provided, you're saving. You're saving.
So, Lucia, do you find that with us being in this pandemic, right? Like you said, some of us are working hybrid, some of us fully remote, some of us are back in the office. Do you think
Mm-hmm.
that that makes it a little harder to have these types of promotion slash salary reevaluation conversations? Do you think that working from home lessens our ability to really showcase?
Absolutely, absolutely not, because we're moving to we're pivoting. This is what the cause of a pandemic, right? So where a lot of companies are, I can't say a lot, but for most part, a lot of companies are moving to 100% remote, right? And I think now corporate America understand that we're fully functioning, working from home. The work is getting done, right? So it's a matter of my performance, not about my body in the office, it's about me performing. So that should not be a hindrance when it comes to a promotion or a raise because I'm working from home remotely. The work is getting done. I'm performing, I'm delivering, and that's what counts.
So somebody who's listening to this can say, okay, I hear what you're saying. This is great. But we do know that micromanagers exist. And I think the pandemic is the nightmare for micromanagers, right? Because they cannot
See,
see
stop
you.
by your desk, stop by your
Right.
office.
It's gonna be like, oh, you
Where are you
left
going? I'm going to the
Starbucks,
restroom. Like,
right? So let's say you are that person, you've done your research, you have that win folder, you have the qualities, you are a valued employee, and it's like, listen, I like me talking about a promotion, like this is inevitable. Like I've
right,
checked all the boxes, but I'm working, fully remote. I have this micromanager. And let's say you are either not considered or passed up because I don't know. Again, the micromanager might have something. How does somebody approach that? Do they go to HR? Like, what is that grievance that they could launch that won't, become retaliation for them?
just having a micromanager it's not solid. um what's the word? It's not just in it's not something warrant for us to go and have a conversation with your manager because that's
Right.
just how they manage, right? We know that it exists because there's a word for it, a micromanager or
Mm-hmm.
someone who's hands off, right? So that's just his management style. And I don't think we can penalize someone because their management style is just, their micromanager, right?
Right.
So it's there are two things. You can choose to find a structure that's going to work for the both of you,
Mm-hmm.
or then if it's hindering you with your performance in your health, right? Because that can start to take a toll on you, then it may be time for you to look internally within another department
Mm.
or move to
Right.
another company.
So that gets a little difficult. It's a little
Yeah.
dicey, it sounds.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can't go to HR like, oh my God, I have to show him a report twice a day. Like I've stated I've done my job. I need him to trust that I've done my. That's just how they function. We know that. So
And
there are
that's
different type of managers. There's those who are hands off, free range, allow you to spread your wings, and there are others that just need to be day to day being dated with information. Like they want you to come to them and they want you to meet them and help you guide. They need that. So HR can't really step in and just ask someone to just change their way of
style.
managing
Yeah.
people, their management style. Yeah, it's
All
difficult.
right. All right. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, I mean, I feel like we've covered a lot of ground here when it comes to
Yeah,
promotion, salary reevaluation. And I think that people can walk away with some good tips, right? I think the biggest thing, again, that we have really touched on is the need for research, 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 research.
but I will add this if you don't mind. I
Hmm.
had a couple of years ago. I had I have a good friend who has been a stay-at-home mom for like 6, 7 years.
Oh, wow.
And she's like, oh my God, it's time for me to go back to corporate America, but I don't know what to put on my resume. I'm like, are you kidding me? You're the CEO, you're the CFO, you're the administrative assistant. What? Don't undervalue what you've done being a stay-at-home mom. And I think a lot of times we do that. Like take it up. And at the time her husband has his own business. You you manage his business.
Hmm.
Put the business on your resume and put yourself as director of operations.
Listen,
You help them manage the business while raising the children. So let's not, sell ourselves short. So think of everything that you do when someone asks you if you have this skill or that skill. We always take it more in a corporate setting, but also reevaluate how you function outside of the world, outside
right.
of corporate setting. If you're able to manage that, whether at church, you've been tasked to do this, so always think of all the skills, not just in corporate, but whether it's a church, being a part of the PTA,
Hmm.
you're managing the PTA at the school, look, everything that you do, find some skills that you've learned, if you've adapted, you can apply to the new role.
So I think that above research, that's probably more important, because I think that a lot of us are involved in so many different things, whether it's being, out in the churches and doing volunteer stuff, or like you said, running a household. These are important things. So I think that going back to that coach tip that you gave, a lot of
Yes.
us might not be able to articulate that in a way. So I think
Yeah.
seeking a coach to help you do that, that's where I think a lot of
That's what the
value.
value.
Mhm.
Listen, they may charge you $250 for the 1 day consultant. I don't know what the range is,
Mhm.
but you should definitely invest in that, just to understand where you stand and what you're worth, and how
Right.
to monetize that.
Right. And to at least help you create that one
Create that
share.
work. Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
I think I'm about to get myself a coach.
Yeah.
I had one
Listen.
before. I had one before. It wasn't a career coach though, but it was for business. But I think even though you may be doing okay in your career, it never hurts to get a career coach. So,
Absolutely. I'm going to invest in one for myself too.
yes. Well, let me know what that
Everyone
link
needs one.
is.
I
When you
I
find
will.
them, let me know who
When
that
I find one, I'll let you know. Absolutely.
is. All right. Well, Lucha, thank you so much for taking the time and dropping all these gems. I feel like you always drop some good gems. And I think that this episode, especially as we are entering 2020 and, going into this new 2020, 2021, and
Oh
going
my
into
God.
2022, people, at least, during their little Christmas break, their time off, they'll have something to kind of mull over and really consider.
It always happened around the holidays.
Right.
You know,
Right.
people have goals. So start thinking, and it doesn't always have to net with you leaving, but definitely
Right.
having that conversation about your next step, your next move is great
Right.
to have.
Okay. Well, again, Lucha, thank you so much. And
Thank you.
I do want to give you an opportunity, because I know you still have, your brand. So,
I
is there
do.
social media that you want to drop, website links?
Absolutely. Designed by Lou. That's www.designed with the ED. So DESIGNEDBYLU.com. Instagram, Designed by Lou. Facebook, Designed by Lou.
All right, great. Well, thank you,
Thank
Lucha
you.
Saint-Fleury. And
Thank you.
thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of FREEda's World. And I will speak to you guys next week.
Happy holidays if we don't see each other.
Yes, happy
My brother.
holidays.